Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining both John and I to this remote version of the presentation. Thanks to all members who joined us on Monday of this week as well to hear the presentation for good in live format. From my understanding, there was some lively debates and some great questions asked from the floor, and it was a really good members' evening and day for the 1 o'clock session as well. Just to send my apologies to those who were in attendance. I know John did that for me on Monday, but myself and my family came down with a bug over the weekend, which wiped all four of us out, unfortunately. So I do apologise that I wasn't there in person on Monday. A lot of time and effort has gone into producing this presentation, so I was very disappointed not to be there in person on Monday. But thanks to John for stepping in for me and doing a good job and hosting two good sessions for the members. So if we move on to today's presentation, I'm going to kickstart the slide, kickstart with a slide the same way we did with the course presentation, because the recent governance review wasn't just a paper trail or updating paper. It really means something to the club, and we're really pleased with the way things are going, and we're trying to make big improvements from an engagement perspective. And to reiterate, the mantra during that review process was directors direct, managers manage, and members enjoy. And ultimately, we want to engage with you all as members more and provide you with more information about the running of your golf club. And I hope from the openness of the last two sets of presentations, 2 weeks ago from a course perspective, and more recently this Monday from a wider club perspective, you can see that we're really trying to put that into action. So what have we done to date to try and improve communications? We've obviously continued with our bi-weekly course and club updates. In recent weeks, we've actually done them a bit more frequently, because there's been a bit more information going on. And now, as we're going into the season, there's going to be a lot more information to give to members as well. Myself and Gareth have been really enjoying our bi-weekly members engagement sessions. We've done 3 so far. We had quite a few people in attendance at the first 2, not so many at the third, but we're going to continue to do them. And our next one is next Thursday, which we really look forward to doing. And no doubt we'll catch a lot of the Thursday Diddley players to hopefully be able to, as I say, engage with more members. I'm continuing to meet with 2 4-balls a week after their rounds of golf, which again, really enjoying being able to spend more time with members and chew the fat over key topics that obviously impact us all as members of the club. Again, we've done 2 course presentations on the 30th of January. We followed that up with a video, a remote session, just as John and I are doing now, for those members who are unable to attend on the evening to still be able to get all the key information that impact you all as members, and a further 2 presentations on Monday, and indeed this now follow-up. So today's presentation will summarise the club's current economic challenges. We'll put to you the proposed budget and membership fees for 23-24, and John's going to touch on his short-term and long-term initiatives to generate additional income streams to lessen the financial burden on our members. It's been an incredibly challenging budget to pull together, and the main reason for that is that we fully recognise the pressures felt by you all as members due to the cost of living crisis. We've tried to ultimately keep the fees as low as possible, but that pinch that everyone's feeling at home, we're no different as a business. We're feeling that exact same pinch as well. But we hope that can come across that we are doing what we can to try and keep the fees as low as possible, but ultimately we still need to cover the operational costs of the business, but fully empathise and realise the pressures at home as well that everyone is experiencing. So that's certainly been taken into account whilst pulling together the membership fees and the budget for next year. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to John, who will go in and kickstart the presentation proper, who will then hand over to me to do a little bit more on budget and the membership fees, and then John again will talk about the short and long term initiatives that he's come up with as a board and as a collective that we'd like some feedback from members on. So John, if I hand over to you.
Thank you, Rhys, and can I add my warm welcome to you all, and particular thanks to those who came along on Monday to the 2 presentations. Members' choice, course and club development, or what? And that's really what we want our members to input to us on and feedback to us. I personally am passionate about Pennard Golf Club, and I'm very proud of the course that we developed. I'm very proud of the club and the reputation we have as a friendly, welcoming club to visitors. I'm very proud of our volunteers who help in all sorts of ways without any recompense and often without any recognition. And I'm very proud of the fact that we produce a constant stream of juniors who excel, represent the club so well, and excel in local, national, and international competitions. And of course, I'm very proud of the staff as well, who keep the whole operation smoothly, ticking over smoothly. Since 2011, our objective has been to make the golf course as good a quality as it can possibly be. We've invested in equipment fit for the purpose. We budgeted for sufficient materials, invested in green staff, renewed our creeking irrigation system on greens, tees, and surrounds, and we've improved facilities, for example, the golf studio. But it's not been without hurdles along the way. We all know about the challenge of climate change. We see the cow and rabbit damage daily, and then COVID came along right at the wrong time for us. There are elements of the local community who aren't well disposed to the golf club. We have cost and wage inflation, high interest rates, which makes it difficult to access capital. Revenue from subscriptions, green fees, and food and beverage is up year on year. However, in the last year, our margins on food and beverage have been severely squeezed by the rising cost of materials. We have unknown future energy costs. Full rates will become payable. Recently, we've had what seems to be good news that they won't be payable until 24-25, and we'll have a 75% discount next year. But we're waiting for that to be finally finalized. Higher interest rates impact our machinery costs, and of course, the salary and wage increase expectations of our staff. It would be unreasonable to expect them to continue at the wage levels now with the cost and price increases that they are experiencing. Just to remind us about Kerry's presentation 2 weeks ago, his review of the playing surface has made it obvious to me that those that we can control, i.e., we can water, we can deal with. It's where we have no water to control the surfaces that we have problems. And that's the fairways particularly, and the areas, the walkways and the areas between greens and tees. His overview of increased golf running costs demonstrated to us that rather than 10% inflation, which is the headline rate that everyone talks about, many of our materials have increased by 20, 30, 40% over the past year or so. There are problems in recruitment and retention of greenkeepers. It's not an attractive industry, and it's a challenge for the present and for the future. He also talks about fairway irrigation as a major challenge for us, and of course, the rabbits. Not just the question of reducing numbers, but it's a question of repairing and maintaining the damage they've done already. Right, I'll hand back to Rhys now, who's going to take us through the draft budget and membership fee proposals for 23-24.
Brilliant, thank you, John. So as I've already alluded to, this particular draft budget has been particularly challenging, albeit because of the increases or the constant increases that we're experiencing as a business, but also everything at the forefront of our mind is how does that impact on the members, and ultimately to try and reduce the impact as best as we can. But just to give a general overview of the draft budget, we've been pretty fortunate that due to some prudent management of utility contracts, as meant so far we've been unimpacted by the cost of gas and electricity. Our gas is currently fixed until March 2026. Our clubhouse electricity is fixed until March 25, and the Greens compound is till March 2024, all at pretty competitive rates as well. Behind the scenes, I'm also working closely with GMG Golf Management Group, who, as you can see there, are working partners with England Golf, Wales Golf and Scottish Golf. And we're looking at potential introduction of solar, which involves some grants for golf clubs. So we're hoping we can introduce solar at a real cost-effective or in a real cost-effective manner by the time our contracts come to an end in 24-25. So we've got a bit of time to hopefully get ahead of the game in that sense. Again, a few notables or notable points within this budget is the variable category increases that we're going to be seeing. So whilst we're going to try and generalize the percentage increase, it's important to point out that not everyone will receive the same increase, and there's a few reasons for that. Number one is those members that supported the club during COVID, which the club are immensely appreciative of. Quite simply put, without that support, the club probably wouldn't be here today. So that certainly can't go unnoticed. But that discount that we've given the past 2 years as a thank you and as a gesture of and as a token of our appreciation for that continued support, that now has to be caught up, and therefore those members that did support the club during that period, they're going to be having a slightly bigger increase than the headline figure. Ladies, again, we really empathise with the lady section here, because ultimately, when we set out on our EDI journey and our equality journey 2 years or so ago, we obviously hadn't factored in the rise the rise in inflation and simply the rise in running of the business, and therefore the increased fee that was going to happen this year for the ladies to become aligned with the male fee is obviously now far more exaggerated than what we'd hoped it to have been 2 years ago. So yeah, really feel from the ladies from that perspective, but ultimately we have to make the move to full EDI. It's a commitment we made as a club 2 years ago, and ultimately it's a legal requirement for us as a club to make sure that we're fully aligned with the Equality Act of 2010. And the young person's discount is also going to be reduced for discussions that have been had around the board table. Over the last 2 years, we've been fortunate to receive rates relief, which has been wonderful. 2 years ago, we had full relief. The year after that, we had 50%, and this year it's looking increasingly likely that we're going to have a 75% discount, which is a huge saving for the golf club of circa £30,000. It's unlikely that that's going to continue for 24 and 25 and beyond, so that's money that we're going to need to find in our budget again. But for this year, that relief is going to enable us to try and keep the fees to the level that they are at the moment, and indeed the proposed figure is going to be. And we continually discuss with our suppliers how we can try and keep our prices down as best we can. And some of our main suppliers are listed there: Cassie Howell, Howells, Toppers, etc. We are constantly speaking with them to try and negotiate best prices to try and keep our margins as good as they can be, and ultimately try and run the business as prudently as we can. So in terms of the draft budget, we've obviously summarised in terms of key headers for our forecasted income. Obviously, the subscription line there of 471,000. I'll come on in due course to how we hope to achieve that. But that is the forecasted income from a subscription standpoint for the 23-24 season. We do have to continue with the irrigation surcharge. which was introduced back in 2019. At that time, we obviously informed members of the need to introduce it. We also said that we would hope to get rid of that surcharge as quickly as we can, but we would continue it for as long as need be in order to be able to cover the repayment of the irrigation loan. Food and beverage, we're forecasting an income of 406,000, which is very, very, very healthy indeed. Green fees, 210,000. So a little bit of background to the green fees. Certainly our aim as a club is to reduce the number of visitors that we have here to ultimately increase the usage for members, more tee times for members. And the long-term plan is to continue to improve the golf course to be able to charge a greater green fee, more footfall, but the same level of revenue. So again, members aren't burdened by any shortfall. So that's the long-term plan and strategy that we've been introducing over the last 3-4 years. And then you can see the smaller sort of ticket items, as it were, on the income are all noted there. But that would give us a grand total of £1,145,428 income. Then we obviously move on to expenditure, and this shows how really delicate the budget or proposed budget is for next year. And how there isn't much wiggle room at all within the budget. So I'm not going to go through it line by line. The beauty of the remote version is that it's all there for you guys to see on the computer. You can pause and take notes, etc. So we're not going to go through line by line, but certainly summarise the total there. And as you can see, the total forecasted cost, again, just over £1 million as well. So 1,113,582. Now, what does that mean ultimately to bottom line and profits from the golf club's perspective? So net operating profit before depreciation would work out at just shy of 32,000, 31,836. Post depreciation, that would bring our net profit down to just shy of £3,000, 2,946,000. So as you can see, very, very little wiggle room there. If anything crops up, if there's any unforeseen budgeted items that may crop up throughout the year, and something the club hasn't typically done over previous years, because we've tried to keep membership fees as low as possible, is to build in a surplus into the budget. Now, any business owners out there in the membership and even members that don't run their own businesses, but just generally have a feel for businesses, I'm sure they would agree that it would certainly be financially prudent to build in a surplus so we don't catch a cold throughout the year. So I'll come on to a potential second draft budget, which does include a surplus in due course. But what does this draft budget mean for membership figures? Now ultimately, it means a 12% increase, which I hope majority of members can see the reasons why that would need to be the case with the increased running costs and the rate of inflation at the moment. It's thereabouts in line with that figure. So as you can see in the far left corner there, where it says cost, that's the current cost of our membership fee for the members that weren't members during COVID. So these, as I said at the start of the presentation, these increases have been based on the current top fees. So there is a slight additional impact to those other members that we've talked about in the slides previous. Again, I'm not going to go through these line by line, because you can pause and take note as you're watching this. But you can see that 12% increase on a full playing member, for instance, would go from 943 to 1,056. There would still, of course, be the need for the £50 irrigation, which would take the total fee to 1,106 on a full playing category. And as you can see, that's the same principle then throughout the whole document as you go down. And then you can see the far right column, just after the yellow columns, they're more of a sort of a purpley grey in the right-hand column. You can see what those total amounts represent based on our current membership figures. So that would then give us a grand total of 494,801 from a membership perspective, which obviously is the membership plus the irrigation surcharge as well. So just from a straight membership perspective, it's circa 471, and then plus the 23,775 from the irrigation standpoint. So, as I've said, it's not a straight 12% increase for everyone. So there's a brief summary there of the members that will be affected slightly more. We've obviously talked about those full playing male members, for instance, that supported the club during COVID. They're going to see a slightly additional increase to the 12%. Female members, as we've already noted, it's a sort of a double whammy for the female members. Unfortunately, it's the additional cost of running the club, plus the full move to EDI from a club perspective. So regrettably, the ladies are seeing the greatest increase, but they are the two reasons we've outlined as to why that's happening. And then the young persons categories being reduced as well, as we've already touched on. So, again, just to summarise, despite a 12% increase, there's very little wiggle room in this budget at all, and the board feel it'd be incredibly, or it would be financially prudent to operate a budget with a built-in contingency. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, we've built in a contingency of 2%. I'm sure there's many out there that would argue that's nowhere near enough. Some members might argue that we don't need one, which is why we want to have this dialogue with the members and try to read the room as best we can and try and engage with you all a little more, and allow you to contribute to the running of the golf club, as you rightly should as members of the club. So based on that 2%, what does that essentially mean? And as I'm sure you can all appreciate, there's many different ways we could get to the same conclusion. So for the purpose of this, we've added on that additional 2%, or to try and cover that 2% surplus, we've added it onto the membership fees. We could, of course, accept more visitor income, but that would impact on the ability of members to access the golf course, which is something we don't want to do. But there's different ways of getting to the same point. But for the purpose of this illustration, we've based it on membership subscriptions. So the surplus ultimately equates to just over £22,000, 22,271, and that would take the need for membership subscriptions to just over 493,000. So again, all the other forecasted income streams would remain the same, but we'd need to cover that additional income from a membership subscription by increasing the fee slightly. Moving on to the forecasted costs, again, they're not going to change in any way. They would stay as they are. It would just be purely building in the 2% surplus based on that cost of 1,113,000. So essentially what that would then allow us to do, we'd have a little bit of wiggle room. As I say, some members might argue that it's too much wiggle room. Some members might say it's not enough. That would give us a net profit after depreciation of just over 25,217. So it would at least give us some wiggle room if there were any unforeseen circumstances during the year, if there was any urgent repairs that perhaps would need doing. A couple of years ago, we obviously undertook some work to the car park. There was some burst pipes. We were fortunate we were covered the majority of that by insurance, but there was an element of the club contribution that the club needed to give. So again, these are the type of things that would happen throughout the year, unforeseen, not budgeted, but by having a little bit of wiggle room in there, by putting a surplus in the budget, it covers those costs, and it doesn't mean that we have to take away from other areas of the budget, meaning things ultimately don't get done. So that basically works out at a rough 18% increase for members. Again, as we talked about, it's going to vary depending on the categories for the points we've already touched on. And again, we're not going to go through this line by line. The reason practice and social members are in yellow is that the proposal is still that they would remain at 12%, because they're so minimal and so small in terms of monetary value from the club's perspective, and usage. They obviously don't get the full value of golf course, etc., as other playing members would. So again, you can see exactly the same graph as we worked off the premise from the 12%, but it's based on 18%, and that's all there for you to see in terms of how we've got to that figure. We've obviously got potential cost control measures to look at, but all of which will obviously have big implications on quality and service levels you've all become accustomed to. And we're fully aware we're not perfect as a golf club. We feel we do pretty well, but there's plenty of room for improving what we do. We know we're not perfect. We want to strive to produce a better golf course, better club, better all-round environment for you all as members. But obviously we need some resources to be able to do that as well. And by cutting these, it'll obviously impact that. But there are options that we need to consider as well. And it's something for you as members to feed back into us about. Would you be happy with some of these suggestions? Reducing food and beverage hours, for instance, reducing staff costs and overheads, reduce the greenkeeping team, obviously having a huge impact on the golf course. We've already seen from Kerry's presentation 2 weeks ago that we're already understaffed for the amount of hours it takes to just set up the golf course on a weekly basis. We already don't have enough staff. So if we were to reduce that the team anymore, what impact would that have on the golf course? Reduce admin hours, us here in the office, cutting our hours, how much money would that save? A whole restructure of the business. We'll obviously continue to negotiate price reductions, and we could even change some suppliers. We could reduce our cleaning hours. Again, that would have an impact on the quality of the club and the cleanliness of the club. An interesting fact, some of you might not be aware of the cost of Sky for a business. Now, this would typically cost an organisation such as ours £8,000 a year. We're fortunate with the new brewery deal that was negotiated a few months ago that it was agreed that they would pay for 50% of our Sky bill. So that's brought it down from £8,000 to £4,000 a year. Still a lot of money to pay, but we appreciate the benefits that brings to members. They're able to come here and watch sport after their round, or even just come down here for a drink with their family and be able to enjoy watching some sport. But these are all things that we potentially need to look at in terms of controlling our costs, bringing the costs down, meaning that we're not passing on too much of a burden or financial burden to you all as members. Importantly, though, what we want to get across, we also need to generate new revenue streams for the club, which John is now going to touch on for you all to have a little look at and feedback to us, which John is now going to propose to you all. So, John, if I hand back over to you for you to go into the proposals.
Thank you, Rhys. As I said earlier, I'm extremely passionate about Pennard Golf Club, and I'm extremely proud of the golf club. But I'm also frustrated that we never seem to be able to establish a pot of money to make investments to improve the club and particularly the golf course. So we put together some ideas, none of which are rocket science, some of which are self-explanatory, some of which need some effort. And I'll be appealing towards the end to members to get more involved and to actually help to deliver some of these items. We could increase green fees. Porthcawl are charging £195 per round this year. I think there's possibly some room. We put them up to 125 for, and we have to judge how much further we can go. Entry fees for Open Week, I think because of our reputation, because of that, we've now put the green fees up, we could increase the fees from, say, 25 to 40. Just as a note again, Porthcawl are up to 115 per person per event, open event. We are putting up as an experiment, we're putting up the fee for the Open Week medal round to £40. And although we only went live a couple of weeks ago, we're already 75% let for that comp. So that is a good indicator of where we may be able to go. I think we can leverage more involvement and use of the club by the Pennard and Southgate community, and we had some good ideas coming out of the group who attended the meeting on Monday, both at lunchtime and evening. We're constantly looking for grants and soft loans to augment our income. I don't think we make enough use of sponsorship, and again, there was some good points made in the meetings on Monday. Allied to that, we can improve our marketing. For example, there are a lot of people in the Gower and Swansea with second homes and holiday homes. A large number of them must be golfers, so we ought to target those people specifically for country memberships, because as we know, country memberships are lucrative, but they don't put much pressure on the golf course or the availability of tee times. Bar cards. We introduced bar cards a few years ago, and it's safe to say they didn't go down a bundle. But I think those of us who support the club through food and beverage operation would be would feel that then every member should bring that support, and that perhaps there should be a set figure put on the bar card that members need to spend it within the clubhouse. Donations and bequests, self-explanatory, and there's also been floated the idea of a catering cart halfway hut to generate both income but also to give service to members. Pop-up restaurants, kitchen takeovers. We did our first kitchen takeover a couple of weeks ago, and it was a huge success. It was sold out in less than a day, and there's a list of people waiting for the next one. 5-year memberships. If we needed to raise cash in the short term, that is a solution, although I'm always wary about that, because what it does is reduce the number of annual memberships. There was a suggestion we could alter the spike bar to increase the usable space, although that may have a problem with fire regulations. Certainly, there's been some comment about the opening hours of the food and beverage the food operation, and the answer may be to have a hot food cabinet, so at least when people come off the course and the kitchen is closed, they can get some food. I caused a furore on Monday by suggesting that the ladies should make the cake. So I'm now saying that all you men bakers can contribute cakes as well. But if you go up the end of the road to the cafe in Southgate, you're paying £5 or £6 for a cake and a coffee. And we should encourage people who use the footpaths, walkers and hikers and so on, to come into the club to have a coffee and a cake. We need to exploit the facility more in terms of hire. There's sporting event nights, film nights, but both those need people to organise them. They don't just happen. 9-hole memberships and that's particularly with with our older members in mind who reach a point where 18 holes is a bit too much. Then we were looking at 9-hole memberships in order to avoid people giving up golf altogether, and extending their playing career for a few years. And then the last two items there, capital replacement fund and members loan scheme, I'll come back to in a minute. Potential longer term projects, and I know people are going to say there are huge hurdles for each of these, but they're again, if members can feed back their thoughts and their views on this, then we can start carrying out the work necessary to try and move them from ideas to actuality. The Londis housing development refers to the frontage onto Linkside Drive. Years ago, the golf club had outline planning permission for housing there, and it lapsed. I recently met with a planning consultant, and he is of the view that it is possible to revive that, and particularly if we put together a project in conjunction with a social housing group. Our immediate past captain, Steve Ware, had the idea of, who was a keen camper van man, had the idea of establishing a hookup for camper vans overnight. Whenever he goes out and about, he pays £25–30 a night just for a supply of electricity, access to water, access to waste disposal. We could have, if we could find a suitable location and say have 5 hookups, that would generate a decent amount of money. Tower Field, Towerfield is the only piece of land we own which is not common land, other than where the clubhouse and the car park are situated. Now, the thought there is to, with that wonderful view down over Three Cliffs, is to develop some kind of upper market, not camping, but more of a mobile home stroke chalet type development. Again, we find a partner to provide all the capital investment, and then we take a cut of the income. Energy efficiency measures, Reese has already mentioned that, and it wouldn't generate income, but it would generate savings. There's been some thoughts about a balcony extension. If we could widen the balcony to the clubhouse so that we can have room for tables for people to eat, what a wonderful view that is for people to have food during the summer months. A bowls green. The thinking behind establishing a bowls green is, as I told Kerry, it's only one additional green for him to maintain, but it would give members who are finding that golf is leaving them behind, give them another sport to play. And it would also, if we focused it towards the community, would help to bring the local community into the club. And likewise with Patang courts, which is a growing sport, relatively easy to make the investment, and again designed to bring people who are not golfers or current members of the club into the club to use the club. I said I'd come back to the Club Development Fund and Members Loan Scheme. By way of kicking off discussion about this, I suggest that we put 25% of our green fee income, which would be approximately 50,000, just over, allocated to a club development fund for capital projects or to service loans for capital projects, which is ring fenced. Now, for members, that would mean for each 50,000 transferred, it would add approximately £100 to the full paying subscription per annum. But the fund will continue to grow year on year when it's not spent out, and provide this finance to improve the golf course and enable us to do the things that I get so frustrated about, because we have not got the finance to do it. Now, in conjunction with this, I would like you to consider a members loan scheme to raise initial finance for capital projects. Access to capital is one of our problems, because we have money borrowed at the bank for the first irrigation project and for the Sybil's loan in connection with COVID. Now, I've talked to Carmarthen Golf Club, who in 2017 established a members loan scheme, and they were able to raise £325,000 from that one scheme. So it is doable, and I have they've kindly given me all of the paperwork and documentation associated with it, and we will be coming forward with a scheme over the next year. If we establish a members loan scheme, my initial thought is the club development fund would be used to repay members principal and interest over the life of the loan, say 15 years. So it's not just a gift to the club, it's a commercial proposition. I'm not saying that that's how the scheme would end up looking, but that's an idea to put into the pot. And the other thing is that the important thing to remember is that the beneficial interest in loans would be transferable, including by bequest, and that would be CTT free. So it's a tax efficient way of passing money on to heirs. Right, just before introducing fairway irrigation, I just wanted to remind us what the approach to the 8th was like before irrigation and what it's like now. So there is no doubting the effect that, as Kerry says, having control means to the quality of the playing surfaces. So fairway irrigation. We have a scheme put together by Roger Davey. The total cost, including VAT, would be £500,000, which is approximately the same as the first scheme when we replaced the existing one for the greens and tees. It would cover all fairways, including par 3s, the practice area, and some walkways. We could choose to install it for a limited number of fairways as a proving trial to establish that what it does is to establish a grass cover that would, as per the approaches to the 8th and the 18th. If we did it in chunks, it would increase costs because of every time you have to mobilize your teams, but it does spread the capital cost over a number of years. The other thing to point out is that prices are almost bound to go up during the period, so it would become more costly as time went on. But the other thing we are doing is looking at how much of the actual installation we could do ourselves using our greens team in the winter months, which is when this installations are carried out. And if we can, for example, if we can source all the thousands of meters of polythene pipe locally and save money, and then we can install all the pipe lines ourselves, then we may be able to save 100, 150, 200,000, but substantially reduce that cost. And that is just getting underway now in the next few weeks. But it's unlikely that well, we won't be doing anything this winter, and we may well not be able to do anything until next winter, unless we did go for the limited number of fairways or the DIY option. So again, please feed back to us on your opinions on fairway irrigation and your views on the benefits or otherwise that would come from it. I should just go back and say that with the club development fund, if we got an encouragement from the members, then that would not come into operation until the 24-25 year. So subscriptions, if we include the club and course development fund, add another £100 from 2024-25. We may or may not include the existing levy, consolidate it into subscriptions. But in return, we'd be able to service existing debt on the replacement irrigation system and on the CBILS loan. We could fund investment in fairway irrigation and pest control and future projects. And we'd have an opportunity to build a fund for future course and club development. Increased member involvement. Amongst our membership, there are a lot of skills, knowledge and experience that we would like as a board and as a club to tap into. So people who've got experience in finance, engineering, construction, building trades, planning, marketing, IT, catering, events organization, leadership roles, and many more. We'd like those people to come forward and offer their expertise to the club. It's all very good having ideas, but the difficulty is always putting those ideas into practice and making them work. And we need support and help in doing that from people who know how to. So back to the original question, members' choice, course and club development, and the question mark, I don't know. I don't know if we don't want to take the club forward, then I think inevitably you never stand still, you just move backwards. And as I said at the beginning of my part of this presentation, I'm passionate about Pennard, I'm proud of Pennard, and I want to take the course and club forward and continually improve the course and the club and the reputation of the club. Now, your call to action, we start a week's consultation period now, during which we're asking you to feedback your thoughts and in any way that you choose. We look forward to hearing your views and coming out with this remote presentation. There will be a short document trying to crystallize what we would like you, the members, to feedback to us on. Thank you.
Brilliant, fantastic. Thank you, John, and thanks all once again for tuning in to listen to the remote version of the presentation. As John rightly says, that everyone involved in the running and the management of the club are incredibly passionate about the club and only want to see what's best for the club going forward. But the important thing in that has to be aligned with the members 100%. We're fully aware of that as a board. Hence the shift to try and engage and discuss key topics with the members more. It's all well and good trying to develop the club, but it must be aligned with the needs and the requirements of you as members. So thanks all for tuning in. So what we're just going to do now, John and I, there was obviously some questions asked on the day. We're just going to touch on a few of those questions that were kind of duplicated in the 1 o'clock session and the 7 o'clock session. We're of course not going to cover all the questions, but the ones that were duplicated and seemed to be at the tip of most members' tongues, we're just going to touch upon and give answers to those questions. But of course, if anyone that wasn't there on Monday would like some questions answered that don't perhaps get raised in this section now, feel free to come and speak to myself or John, drop us an email. We're happy to answer any and all of those questions. So one of the questions was asked in terms of fairway irrigation, and by installing or potentially installing it, were we looking to turn the fairways into grass factories at the club? Now that couldn't be further away from the truth, and Kerry answered this question on the evening. Essentially, what fairway irrigation would do, it would allow us or give us the ability to keep grass alive on the golf course. We've got such unique topography and free draining ground out on the golf course. It's almost impossible to keep grass alive during any sort of cold weather where there's a lack of germination, lack of growth, and also a lack of moisture. So all it would do is give us the ability to keep grass alive, and it would also enhance the practices that Kerry and his team do out there on a daily basis. And an example of that is the overseeding program that we do most winters. So this winter or this autumn, we spent £11,000 in seed to put into the ground, which will hopefully come March, April, germinate. At this moment in time, if we have a dry and cold March, April, there's no guarantee as to how much of that seed, that £11,000 worth of seed, will germinate. Whereas if we had fairway irrigation, if we did have a dry, cold spell in that March, April, we would turn on the system and it would give the seed the nutrients that it needs and the water that it needs to be able to survive. So we know the money we're spending out on the golf course, we're going to get maximum effect for. But no, we don't want to be a Parkland. We're a links course. We're incredibly proud to be a links course, and that's the way it's always going to be. So even with fairway irrigation, that isn't going to change. John did touch on it, but a question was raised, so perhaps the point was missed during the presentation. But obviously, the cost is substantial for fair irrigation, around 500,000, including the VAT. And on a couple of occasions, someone made the point that could that cost be broken down, and could we take on more work in house and source materials ourselves? As John's alluded to, absolutely. We are looking at so many different options as to how this could potentially get off the ground, how it could be done. So that is 100% on the table, looking to see if we can purchase the parts in-house, and obviously do some of the work in-house as well, if not all the work. But all the stuff is, all of which we are looking at the moment, sorry, I should say. But ultimately, when we're in a position to present something with a bit more detail to you as members, we absolutely will. And as John's alluded to throughout this presentation, it'll be a member's choice. It will be completely up to you as members if you feel that we should press forward with this irrigation project. All we're doing is giving you the facts and figures behind it. So yeah, we're looking at all the options from that perspective at the moment. We had a question in terms of catering and the offerings that we've got, and if members could be included a little more in sort of the offerings that we had. A member asked if we could survey the members to find out what your needs and requirements are from a food and beverage standpoint. Absolutely a wonderful idea. We'll certainly be picking up on that in the coming weeks, and we will certainly send a survey out to you all to gain your feedback from a food and beverage perspective and what you'd like us to change and improve upon, but also what you'd like us to keep on some of the things that we're doing well. And in addition to that, we will also be sending a survey from the members club website perspective. As you'll all see, we've developed the front end side of the website, but we also now very keen to develop the members section. So we'll also be sending out a survey from that perspective as well. So John, there was a couple of questions that I'll pose to you as well, which I know you answered on the evening. One was around the joining fee and if the board are considering raising that joining fee at all.
Yes, we're looking at what other clubs do. For example, I believe Pyle and Kenfig charge a year's subscription as a joining fee. Whilst I would not necessarily advocate that, I think that we can afford to charge a higher joining fee, and we will continue to keep that in view and as time goes on.
Fantastic. And the final one for you, John, was just some clarification on the obviously proposals and the content in which we've put forward today. As you alluded to on Monday, that this isn't essentially a members' vote. So it's what exact feedback do you want from members and sort of the choices that they have. So if you could just clarify that slightly for us.
Yes, as I said, with this remote version of the presentation will come out some notes clarifying those areas that we would like members to comment on, to give us their views, give us their feedback. And please do so, because if you don't tell us, then we can't possibly know. And whilst the ultimate decision has got to be the responsibility of the board of directors, we will take into account the views of our members in influencing what that decision is.
Marvellous. Thank you, John. Brilliant. Okay, well, that brings us to a close in terms of the remote presentation. So I'd just like to once again thank you all for taking the time to not only attend Monday's presentation gone, but also those members that attended the course presentation a couple of weeks ago, and indeed all those members that have logged into these online versions as well. I sincerely hope that you are enjoying the information that we're giving you, and you can then be able to see the bigger picture in terms of how the club operates, how the club runs, and be able to ultimately contribute more to that as well. As John said, it'd be fantastic to get more members on board in terms of being able to help drive and push the club forward. And ultimately, as I say, we must be aligned with you all as members in terms of pressing those buttons and moving the club forward. So big thank you to all of you once again, and I'll just hand over to John as chair just to close the presentation and give his final remarks.
Oh, thank you, Rhys. Well, surprisingly to myself, I've enjoyed these presentations. I hope we have given you more information. I hope we are convincing you of the new mantra under the new governance system, and we look forward to receiving hopefully constructive and forward-looking ideas from all our members. And please, as my parting plea is get yourself involved in the running of the club in some way or another, or events to help generate these additional income streams, because the more we're able to do that, the less burden falls upon member subscriptions. And thanks again to everyone who has either come to the presentation or has now watched this online version. Thank you.